This week I'm continuing with the series talking about wisdom, and I'd like to talk today about wonder. And last week I quoted from Socrates, and this week I'd like to start by quoting from another great old wise philosopher, Aristotle. Aristotle was quoted as saying this: "Wonder is the beginning of wisdom." Wonder is the beginning of wisdom. Or turn that around. The beginning of wisdom is wonder. So based on that, I'm going to give you a wonder-filled sermon today. Maybe not wonderful, but wonder-filled. When you think of the word wonder, what do you think of? A feeling? Maybe a response to something? Or maybe a memory? I think back to the year 1976. I was 7 years old, and my parents took us on a vacation across the United States. We traveled from Toronto to California and all the way back again. And part of that trip included traveling through Arizona. Well, you can't travel through Arizona without going to see the Grand Canyon. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. Pulling up, stepping out of the car, and it was hot. I mean, really hot. We're talking Arizona in July. And then walking to a lookout point, peering over the iron bars and seeing it for the first time. That panoramic view of a canyon that just seemed to go on forever. It took my breath away. All my senses were heightened. I could almost feel the blood rushing through my veins, and my eyes were as big as saucers. It was a moment of pure wonder. A moment that I knew I would never forget. And then it was all kind of ruined because my dad did something that my dad was very fond of doing when we were young, pretending to throw us over places that were very high up. So my dad picked me up and pretended to throw me into the Grand Canyon. A little parenting tip: don't do that. Don't do that ever. Sorry, Dad. Otherwise, it was a great trip. My point was this: it was a moment in my life where wonder moved from being a word to being something that I felt within. A beautiful opening of my being to something that inspired awe. The poet Yeats said this: go out, I beg you, and taste the beauty of the wild. Behold the miracle of the earth with all the wonder of a child." You know, it's in these moments that I wish that everybody was back in church, because if you were all here, what I would do right now is stop the sermon, and I would ask people just to randomly give me their stories of wonder. And I bet I would hear some great things. Maybe some of you, like me, have had the opportunity to see one of the real wonders of the world, maybe even more than one. Or maybe for you, wonder is something a little more subtle or simple. There's a great little video making its way around the internet these days, and it's a video of a baby tasting ice cream for the first time. I don't know if you've seen it, but her parent holds ice cream close to her, and she leans in and she licks it. And suddenly this look of complete euphoria comes over her face. Her eyes get huge. She starts to quiver. And then with both hands, she grabs the ice cream and she throws it into her face and continues to eat it. I think to myself, how cool it must be to be a baby. Because for the first year of your life, you're experiencing everything new and fresh. It must be a wonder-filled first year of life. It's too bad we can't remember it. But whether as a baby or a child or an adult, no doubt you've had some wonderful moments. Moments that inspired wonder. So what's the connection between wonder and wisdom? Well, Aristotle was a philosopher, which, by the way, literally means to love wisdom. And Aristotle firmly believed that to seek wisdom, one must be open to wonder. One must be willing to be inspired just by the very act of living. He didn't believe that we can untangle the great mysteries of life without approaching life from a place of curiosity and awe. He captured those two qualities in that word, wonder. That's what he believed wonder was: a way of approaching life with curiosity and awe. I'm sure you've heard this story before of the little girl who was in her class, and the teacher gave them a test, and she said, "I want you to list as many of the wonders of the world as you know." Kids started to scribble down answers on their page. They talked about the Grand Canyon or the pyramids or the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, whatever they are. And this little girl sat very quietly in her seat, very deep in thought. Well, the bell rang and all the students got up and they handed in their papers to the teacher. The little girl still sat there. Finally, the teacher said, the assignment's over. You can go. You just need to put down your answers. Girl bends her head over the sheet and she begins to write. And then finally she gets up, she gives the paper in to the teacher, and off she goes on her way. Teacher opens the paper. On top is the title, The 7 Wonders of the World. And underneath, this girl has written, to see, to hear, to touch, to taste, to feel, to laugh, and to love. That's the wisdom of a child. Do you approach life like that, from curiosity and awe? Well, chances are, according to Aristotle, you don't. And do you know why you don't? Because you're too old. That's not me saying that. That's Aristotle saying that. He believed that approaching life with wonder was something that we tend to do naturally as children, but we tend to lose as we age. We get lost in what Aristotle called our neuroses. And soon that natural state of openness is replaced with the things that occupy adulthood, the stressors of life, the things that steal our curiosity and awe. For example, when was the last time you grabbed an ice cream cone and just shoved it into your mouth? It's true, isn't it? We tend to outgrow that sense of wonder. This was captured so well in one of my favorite poems, and I've shared this a couple of times here at Northwest, so you probably heard it before, but it's called On Turning 10. On Turning 10. The whole idea of it makes me feel like I'm coming down with something worse than any stomachache or the headaches I get from reading in bad light, a kind of measles of the spirit, a mumps of the psyche, a disfiguring chicken pox of the soul. You tell me it's too early to be looking back, but that's because you have forgotten the perfect simplicity of being one and the beautiful complexity introduced by two. But I can lie on my bed and remember every digit. At 4, I was an Arabian wizard. I could make myself invisible by drinking a glass of milk a certain way. At 7, I was a soldier. At 9, a prince. But now, I am mostly at the window, watching the late afternoon light. Back then, it never fell so solemnly against the side of my treehouse. My bicycle never leaned against the garage as it does today. All the dark blue speed drained out of it. This is the beginning of adulthood, I say to myself, as I walk through the universe in my sneakers. It is time to say goodbye to my imaginary friends, time to turn the first big number. It seems only yesterday I used to believe there was nothing under my skin but light. If you cut me, I could shine. But now when I fall upon the sidewalks of life, I skin my knees and I bleed. I know that's kind of a melancholy poem, but it's a wise poem as well. The poet Billy Collins captures so well in those words that moment when there's a shift, when the wonder of childhood eases into the complexity of adulthood, and in the process, something is lost. Some would say it's not a bad thing. In fact, it's part of growing up, of facing up to life not as we wish it would be, but as it actually is. It's an important step in maturing as people. And I would certainly agree with all of that. But does wonder still have a place in an adult world of doctor's appointments and bills to pay and kids to worry about, gardens to weed? Is there still a place to stop and smell the roses, or are we too busy putting mulch around them? Aristotle believed so. He believed that preserving wonder was vital as an adult. Without wonder, he mused, all philosophy, poetry, and storytelling would be empty, and thus life would lose its meaning and its value. Without wonder, we wouldn't be in awe of life, and as a result, we wouldn't wrestle with its great truths, and thus we wouldn't grow and deepen as people. He believed, therefore, that the ultimate human quest is one of trying to recapture a childlike wonder, to change one's stance in the world to one of curiosity and openness and awe. Last week I introduced a book to you called Embers, which is written by the Ojibwe writer Richard Wagamese. And I quoted something that he wrote, and I'm continuing to read his stuff. It's amazing. It's really good. But listen to what he said about wonder. Standing in the early morning chill, clearing the car of snow, scraping ice from the windows, I look up and around me at the morning filled with things to see. The way the ice fog magnifies the mountain in the near distance so that it appears closer. The ballet of cat tracks in the snow. The bare leaves like arterial networks in the dimness. The house slumped like a great sleeping bear under the white rug of winter. It occurs to me that the secret of fully being here, walking the skin of this planet, is to learn to see things as though I were looking at them for the first time, or the last. Nothing is too small then, too mundane, too usual. Everything is wonder. Everything is magical. Everything moves my spirit, and I am alive. What does the Bible say? Well, the proverb from the book of Proverbs that I wanted to share today just says this about wonder. Wisdom's instruction is to be in a state of awe before God, and humility comes before honor. Solomon, like Aristotle, or Aristotle like Solomon, saw wonder grounded in humility as the door that opens into the life of wisdom. To be in awe before God. So how do we do that? How do we recapture that state of wonder? Get in a car, drive to the Grand Canyon, and soak in the wonder of it all? Wouldn't that be nice? And again, not sure that's a border that I want to cross these days. There's a nasty souvenir down there that you don't want to come back with. Maybe it begins here. Maybe it begins by developing a mindset for how we approach life. One of my great heroes and role models in life is a guy by the name of Dr. Albert Schweitzer. A true humanitarian, he devoted his life caring for those less fortunate. He was a medical doctor, but also a tireless worker for justice in some of the most desperately poor parts of the world. He also considered himself a philosopher. And for much of his life, as he struggled with horrors of poverty and disease, often the result of great inhumanity from one person to the next, he came to believe that there had to be a grand philosophy that could unite the world. Having traveled the world, he realized that we are divided in so many ways, through race and religion, through philosophy and ideology, through color and creed and community. Still, he believed that humanity was a shared experience, and thus there should be one principle that could guide it. But what was it? He couldn't figure it out. It was while he was in the African country of Gabon in 1915 that he had a revelation. He was on a boat making his way along a river. Listen to what he wrote about that experience. For months on end, I have lived in a continual state of agitation, trying to come up with a shared philosophy of life. I felt like I was pushing against an iron door that would not yield. In that mental state, I had to take a long journey up a river. Lost in thought, I sat on the deck of the barge, struggling to find a universal concept for life. As we journeyed, I wrote. I covered sheet after sheet with sentences, convoluted, confusing, and disconnected. 2 days passed. Late on the third day, at the very moment when at sunset we were making our way through a herd of hippopotamuses, there flashed upon my mind, unforeseen and unsought, one simple phrase. 3 words: reverence for life. The iron door had yielded. The thicket had revealed a path. I knew I'd found a principle that could unite us all in a common quest to treat all life as sacred, nothing more and nothing less. What a great phrase for life, great phrase, reverence for life. Where does wonder begin? It begins by having a reverence for life. Now, I'm going to get a little fired up here because I really believe that Albert Schweitzer has nailed this. What are we missing in our world today? A reverence for life. Instead of seeing life as a rich, colorful, beautiful tapestry of God's creative wisdom and presence, we ignore it at best, we destroy it at worst. We use it for our own ends, we exploit it for our own greed. Instead of seeing the meadow as a vibrant ecosystem capable of nurturing millions of forms of life, we see it as a great place to stick a road. Instead of marveling at the giant oak tree that has stood the test of time, we wonder how many 2x4s may be in it. Instead of sitting on our porch watching the birds fly from fence to feeder, listen to the chatter of the chipmunks, ponder the shape of the clouds drifting overhead, we're perched on the couch wondering what's new on Netflix. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not being preachy because I love Netflix too. There's so much beauty in the world. How often we miss it. Now, the other day when I was at the cottage, I was standing on the dock, and a dragonfly landed on the chair beside me. Now, I don't have a good history with dragonflies. I don't really like them. They kind of freak me out, the way that they fly all up and down all over the place. But I decided to make friends. So I put my finger out, and sure enough, the dragonfly flew onto the end of my finger. And the first thing I could feel, and it almost made me drop it, was it's whatever it is, feet, tentacles, grasping around my finger. It was holding on. And so then I brought it right up to just a few inches from my face, and I really looked at that dragonfly. It might sound weird, but we really looked at each other. You know what? It's a pretty beautiful creature. We need to have a reverence for life, for all of life, a deeply held respect and admiration for the natural ways of the world. That's the beginning of wonder. When we have a reverence for life, we can see it in a new and fresh way, in a wonderful and vibrant way. And that goes for each other as well. What do our scriptures say? It says that we are beautifully and wonderfully made. But instead of appreciating the complexity of each person, we tend to reduce people to the sum of their parts. We define them by color, religious affiliation, political views, sexuality. And why do we do that? Because often it's to gain a sense of control. But what do we miss when we do that? A sense of wonder of how truly unique and complex every person is. And think about the people you share your life with. Do you have a reverence for them? Do you look with wonder upon the face of your partner or your children or your grandchildren or your friends? Don't laugh, because I'm being serious. Do you glimpse in them the same spirit of life that colors the rainbow, gives the butterfly its glorious flight, or tilts the sunflower towards its source? To embrace the philosophy of reverence for life means that we can only ever treat others with respect and kindness and love, for we will always have their best interest at heart. In that phrase, reverence for life, there is a universal calling, a shared hope, a collective wisdom to live in mutually respectful relationships with each other and with the world. My point is, if wisdom starts with wonder, then wonder starts with having a reverence for life. And when we feel a reverence for life, we want to make the most of each moment that we have. We want to live abundantly and enthusiastically and with purpose. So on that note, I'd like to share a little illustration. I'm going to wrap it up with this little story. It's called The Station. Tucked away in our unconscious, our subconscious, is an idyllic vision. We see ourselves on a long trip that spans the continent. We are traveling by train. Out of the windows, we drink in the passing scenes of cars on nearby highways, or children waving at a crossing, of cattle grazing on a distant hillside, of smoke pouring from a power plant, of row upon row of corn and wheat, of flatlands and valleys and mountains and rolling hillsides, a city of skylines and village halls. But uppermost in our minds is the final destination. On a certain day, at a certain hour, we're going to pull into the station. Bands will be playing and flags will be waving. Once we are there, so many dreams will come true, and the pieces of our lives will fit together like a completed jigsaw puzzle. How restlessly we pace the aisles, cursing the minutes for loitering, waiting to get to the station. When we reach the station, that will be it. When I'm 18, when I buy my new sports car, when I put my last kids through college, when I paid off the mortgage, when I get a promotion, when I reach the age of retirement, I shall live happily ever after. Sooner or later, if we are wise, we will forget about the station, for we'll realize the true joy is the trip itself. Relish the moment is a good motto, especially when coupled with Psalm 118. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. It is the burdens of today that drive people mad. It is the regrets over yesterday and the fear of tomorrow. Regret and fear are the twin thieves who rob us of today. So stop pacing the aisles and counting the miles. Instead, climb more mountains, eat more ice cream, go barefoot more often, swim more rivers, watch more sunsets, laugh more, cry less. Life must be lived as we go along, and it must be lived with curiosity and wonder. Forget about the station. It will come soon enough. So I invite you as you start this week to simply try and keep that phrase at the front of your mind. A reverence for life, a sacred approach to living. See the sacredness in your garden and be filled with wonder. See the sacredness of those that you share your life with. Most importantly, see the sacredness in the person staring at you out of the mirror. May it be a doorway to wonder. May it be a pathway to wisdom. Or to be more direct, go out and buy an ice cream cone and just stick it right in your mouth. Go out, I beg you, and taste the beauty of the wild. Behold the miracle of the earth with all the wonder of a child. Amen.